Hello, I'm Mercedes Stevenson, and this is the West Block: politics, perspectives, and players.
I will be resigning as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I intend to stay on as leader of the party and the official opposition. And after some conversations with my kids, my loved ones, I felt it was time to put my family first.
The resignation of Conservative Party leader Andrew Scheer last week happened suddenly and shocked some political insiders and observers across the country. Scheer says that he will stay on as party leader until the Conservatives elect his replacement. For now, caucus is supporting Scheer's decision, but is his resignation enough to quash the public battle inside his party? Here to talk about that are joining me are two very seasoned and experienced journalists who've seen it all on the Hill: the Globe and Mail's Ottawa bureau chief, Robert Fife, and John Ivison from the National Post. Caucus is publicly saying they support Mr. Scheer, but do you think he'll be able to stay on as interim leader, Bob?
That's a good question. It depends on how much of a blowback there is in the grassroots about the fact that the Conservative Party fund was paying for 4 of his 5 children's private education. That is a bombshell of a story, and we haven't seen the end result of what that's going on. I mean, I know that a lot of people in the party are very angry about that, and they're concerned as well that leadership candidates will be asked, well, should he pay back the money? You can be sure when MPs get home, their constituents will say, why did this happen? Shouldn't he be paying back the money? So I think it's still a problem for Andrew Scheer. So whether he can remain as interim leader, we'll wait and see, but jury's not out on this yet.
Well, and John, the party's executive director is saying, look, there's nothing to see here, totally normal. We often pay a top-up to party leaders. This was typical. I had an agreement. Does that logic fly in your experience that people would be using money for this kind of thing, for private school tuition?
I think that there's always been a discretionary fund for leaders, and I think Harper had one. For example, if they fly to a government event and then they have to fly to a party event afterwards, then that money goes towards some party expenses. But I think that there was a distinct lack of transparency here, and I think that many party members who donated did not think that they were paying for Andrew Scheer's children's education, whether it's the discrepancy or the differential between Regina fees and Ottawa fees, or the entire fee. It wasn't clear to me what the end result of that was. I asked that question, and they didn't clarify.
And they sure haven't.
if it was the full amount, it's a lot of money. $15,000 potentially per kid for multiple years. So I think that Bob's right. There's still some questions to be asked, but I think the main question was whether Andrew Scheer was going to leave. There's no great animus towards him as an individual. A lot of people like him as a person, and I think that he will be given the benefit of the doubt, I think.
But I don't think the party's national director is going to be around for very long. People want a head. He's the guy who approved it. I think he's going to get fired. And here's the problem it has for the Conservatives. Stephen Harper did not send his kids to a private school. They went to a public school. Justin Trudeau, Mr. Elite, which Mr. Scheer ran on in the election campaign, sends his kids to a public school. And now we find out that Mr. Scheer, who has tried to present himself as a Mr. Ordinary guy, who, by the way, lives in Stornoway, very nice subsidized mansion in Rockcliffe, which is the most elite area of the city, has a car and drivers, makes over $250,000 a year, asks the party to pay for his kids to go to a private school. I think this is not going to go over well.
When you go to the Conservative website and the donation page, it says support Andrew Scheer. I don't think the donors thought they were doing that quite literally.
Direct. Well, when you look ahead, just now we're talking about who else is going to run, who's going to step up to the plate. Who do you think, John, is sort of your top 3 for front runners here?
The one none of us know, because people are still mulling their options. But the one thing I would say, that I saw Gerard Deltel this morning saying, or on Friday saying, whoever it is got to be bilingual. And I think that is the minimum price of entry. I mean, having just covered the election campaign, if you've got to win votes across the country, not just in Quebec, but in francophone areas of the rest of the country, and be in a French language debate, you've got to have a reasonable level of French and English. I mean, Deltel's problem might be the other way around, that his English might be considered not good enough. But I think he's inside the caucus is a realistic contender. I think Erin O'Toole inside caucus is realistic. I think there will be one candidate from the progressive side, it's probably Peter MacKay, but I think a lot of people like Mark Mulroney. He may be a candidate. A lot of people like Ron Ambrose, but I think Ron Ambrose is not going to like the idea of giving up a very comfortable lifestyle and coming back into politics.
Brad Wall was promoting her on Twitter last week as a potential leader.
Right.
Well, and Bernard Lord, the former New Brunswick Premier, is seriously mulling a run for the leadership. He is perfectly bilingual. Rona Ambrose, French is not bad, a lot better than Peter MacKay's. She would be the greatest threat for the Liberals, which is why they've been talking about seeing if they can get her appointed ambassador to Washington, to take her off the playboard. Because I have no doubt that if Miss Ambrose had been the leader in this election campaign, the Conservatives would be back in power. She's a fiscal conservative, but she is not afraid to walk in gay pride parades. She doesn't make she's not a social conservative in the, or at least she doesn't make it a major issue of her ever in her campaigning. So she's, to me, the one we really have to watch and whether she's actually going to go in.
I think the idea of Justin Trudeau having to fight against a female candidate from Ontario or Quebec is his worst nightmare.
And part of this question has been how much of the problem was Andrew Scheer and how much is the party? Because there still are, even if Andrew Scheer goes, elements in the party that are social conservative that are very influential. Is this the turning point for the Conservative Party where they choose a different kind of conservatism?
This is a good question, because the Conservatives have to make up their mind whether they want to be a party of special interest or whether they want to be in government. And, you know, Mr. Harper was successful in telling the social conservatives, we can do some things for you, but we want to be in power. And if we're going to be in power, we have to be a big tent party, and we can't be the voice of social conservatives. And the problem that Mr. Scheer had is that he, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, said, I'm the party of social conservatives. And that did not go over well with urban Canada. And they cannot win unless they broaden it out and become more of a center-right party. And they also, we all know, have to come up with an environmental plan that wasn't taken out of the books of the oil industry.
John?
Yeah, I agree entirely with that.
All the time we have for today, though. I'm sure we'll be back again. Thank you very much to our journalists.
Thanks.